Assalamualaikum and hi Madam Anis. We are from Group 5. We will be present about Shariah Audit. So this is the group member of Group 5 which consists of 4 members. First one is me, Nur Atika binti Hasbullah. Secondly, Nurul Salsabila binti Rahimi. Thirdly, Siti Nur Atika binti Muhammad. And last but not least, Siti Nur Imanina binti Muhammad.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Nur Imanina. So now I will explain a little bit introduction about our presentation today, which is Shariah Audit. So nowadays, educate Shariah audit practices are required to ensure that the operations and activities of Islamic financial institutions, IFI, should be in line with Shariah principles and rules, as well as guidelines set by the regulatory authority. In accordance with Shah Hazin and Zan in 2018, they stated that Sharia auditing is not a new concept in the Islamic history. It has begun during the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad SAW when an organization known as Al-Hisbah was established. The basis of such institution can source from the Quran, where Allah said, "And let there be arising from you a nation inviting to all that is good, enjoying what is right and forbidding what is wrong, and those will be the successful." Surah Al-Imran, verse 104. As the industry grows, they are desperately looking for auditors who can get and gather the best evidence about the information and establish Sharia principles as guided by local Sharia auditors in accordance with the Sharia principle. Other than that, there should be a precise procedure designed by the Sharia auditors that will enable the IFI to determine whether there has been implemented the convenient and effective internal control system for the Sharia compliance. When the adequate Sharia audit is practiced, it will help to sustain and maintain this Sharia compliance in the Islamic financial industry. Now we will look into Sharia audit. What is Sharia audit? So the definition of Sharia audit in according to Bank Negara Malaysia's BNM Sharia Governance Framework, a Sharia audit is a periodic assessment conducted from time to time to provide an independent assessment and objective assurance designed to add value and improve the degree of compliance in relation to the business operation of IFI. Its primary goals and objectives are to ensure a sound and effective internal control system for Sharia compliance. There are two types of Sharia auditing and assurance functions, which are internal Sharia audit and external Sharia audit. Internal Sharia audit focuses on assessing and enhancing the efficiency of internal Sharia risk management, control and governance process in IFI, while external Sharia audit is responsible to give unbiased assurance that IFI complies with Sharia principles and laws in accordance with the requirements specified by Sharia Supervisory Board, SSB, or regulator. The main objective of a Sharia audit exercise, either internal or external, is to make sure that the conducted business operations by an IFI are compliant with Sharia. Here are the IFI design goals that the Sharia audit must adhere to. The first one is report the findings of Sharia compliance and non-compliance for Islamic organizations. The second one is assess the degree of non-compliance and its effect on the IFI as a whole. And the last one is recommend corrective actions, improvement and rectifications necessary in order to comply in accordance to related framework. Now, I will explain about the scopes in Sharia audit. The scope of the Sharia auditors shall encompass all elements of the IFI's business operations and activities, including but not limited to the following areas as stated in BNM's Sharia Governance Structure 2010. The first one is auditing the financial statements of IFI. The second one is compliance audit on organizational structure, people, process and information technology application systems, and the last one is review the adequacy of the Shariah governance process.
Thank you, Imanina, and hi, my name is Siti Nur Atiqah binti Muhammad, and I will proceed this presentation with the first issue in this topic. The first issue is lack of competency of Sharia auditors. Since the early creation of modern Islamic finance in 1970s, this issue has been discussed in the auditing. It is important to mention that a Sharia auditor needs to have a strong knowledge in accounting as well as in Sharia in order to be able to comprehend and audit Islamic financial institution. However, certain institutions like the International Center for Education in Islamic Finance and others have been set up to address this critical educational issue, but it is not adequate to meet the growing public awareness of the critical need for systematic reforms at the tertiary level. The International Financial Institution or IFIS and Sharia auditors are responsible for meeting the requirement of those ummah whose concerns and objectives differ from those of other groups and culture with different worldviews. The administrators of the IFIS are the ones who are ultimately responsible for the fund as well as how they are managed and utilized. If the Sharia auditors fail to ensure that the IFIS follow all the Sharia standards and principles, then they have committed a zulm or injustice to the Ummah, which had entrusted them to the responsible of auditing the IFIS and ensuring that they comply with the Sharia. So for the recommendation to mitigate this issue is where an NIP must have the experienced Sharia auditors because of the explosive expansion of Islamic finance and the consequent needs for such auditors. An auditor who is well versed in accounting and auditing and have a sufficient understanding of Sharia and fiqh is important in order to maintain a check and balance. I think that's all from me, and I will pass this to other presenter.
Thank you, Atiqah, for a great explanation. My name is Nurul Salsabila binti Rahimi, and I will continue this presentation with the next issue. Most research has found that one of the issues in Sharia audit is the inefficient framework in Sharia audit, since there are no specific Sharia auditing system. IFIS has implemented the Sharia audit based on the conventional auditing method, but the Sharia audit focuses more on the compliance of Sharia principles and requirements. The article has conducted a survey about the adequacy of current guidelines in Sharia audit among the knowledgeable person, full experience with auditing, and important person in their organization. And as among the respondents to the survey, there are 60% of respondents believe that the current guidelines for Sharia audit frameworks were inadequate, and as the guidelines provide too brief information, and the majority of frameworks are modified based on the conventional audits. And the effect of this inefficient framework is leading to adopting practice differently or diversifying practices among internal and external auditor. As a result, there may be a huge potential for non-compliant risk. It is because basically an external auditor may focus solely to the operations. Furthermore, the diverse practices adopted in Sharia audit may cause the lack of transparency, as other companies may adopt different practices. Transparency is in the organization are essential things, as it can increase trust and confidence from other stakeholders, especially for the customers, investors, and financial institutions. Efficient framework in Sharia audits will be as a benchmark to the auditor, as in order to ensure the auditor give a good performance, and as a measure to measure how far their practice have achieved the main objective of Sharia audit. By having a proper framework as a benchmark, especially in audit firms, it allows the organization to see the full picture of effectiveness of the internal control system, as well as to reduce the Sharia non-compliance risk. Next, we will discuss about the recommendation for this issue. In order to prevent the issue of inefficient framework, there should be a development in elements of the framework such as key risk areas, audit samplings, and duty and responsibility. Firstly, we will take a look for the duties and responsibility. So, it is an important element needs to develop as it is a vital thing for auditor to have a clear direct to implement their duties as well as to prevent from redundant with the function of other governance. Secondly, specifying key risk areas in the audit framework helps the auditor to develop Shariah risk profiling as well as guiding the auditor on managing the risk in the most suitable way for organization. An example for this is developing a key risk area framework started with the process of identifying a potential threat to the organizations until establishing a Shariah risk. Lastly is audit sampling. It is an important element in the Shariah audit framework as it gives the auditor a clear guidelines and ensure a consistency in implementing Shariah audit practices. An example is sampling risk will determine a sample size, whereas when the auditor finds there may be a higher risk situations, it means the auditor needs a larger sample size in order to identify the potential risk that may give effect to the organizations.
Thank you, Salsabila, for the wonderful explanation just now. Next, I will continue with the lack of independence and the accountability of the Sharia auditing practitioners. Lack of independence in Sharia auditing is one of the most crucial issues that arise in the Sharia audit. Internal auditors should be able to demonstrate that there were no threats to their independence in order to gain the shareholders' trust. This is because IFI stakeholders deem to have integrity through perceived independence of Sharia auditors themselves in appearance and in an act. Other than that, it also suggested that Sharia auditors are expected to be independent enough to give their opinion on whether the IFI is being operated in accordance with the Sharia ruling. Secondly, for the lack of accountability, IFI face another issue in terms of Sharia audit in ensuring the IFI is comply with the Sharia guidelines. In the case of independence, the issue related to this is on scrutinizing the independence between Sharia auditors and in the IFI. The accounting standard of and practice bodies have been taken a serious action on this issue in order to ensure that Sharia auditors are held accountable for carrying out the responsibility of expressing their judgment fairly on whether the financial statements prepared are in accordance with the Sharia principles. It is perceived that the rules of Sharia auditors are also limited to preparation of financial report rather than influencing the decision-making process of IFIs, as the board of director will make the final decisions. As the board of directors hold a greater capacity in making important decisions, the limitation of power in influencing decision of the board of Sharia law auditors indicates that the auditor have lack of accountability. By right, Sharia auditors have a big responsibility because they have to be accountable to the stakeholder, which include the shareholders, the society, and the ummah for their action and inaction. As for the recommendation, a clear line of functional reporting or authority should be included in the internal audit charter, which would enhance the independence of the audit function. For example, by providing the unfettered power of inquiry and reporting. Next is for the accountability, the IFIs must make sure that the Sharia auditors that they hire have a knowledge before starting to audit their financial statement. It is because The reason why they were so afraid to be accountable for their action is because they do not have the enough knowledge to do their job properly. In order to avoid this from happening, IFI must make sure that the auditor have a proper training and a lesson before doing the big task. Thank you. That's all from me. Next, my friend will continue with the next presentation. Thank you.
As a conclusion, with the implementation of Shariah audits that comply with Shariah principles, it will enhance the trust and confidence of Muslims in investing, as they do not have to worry about going against the instruction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, it is not an easy task for the Shariah auditors to manage the Shariah audit, as the scope of Shariah law is very wide and there are many parts that they have to cover. Hence, it is important for all the Shariah auditors to have sufficient knowledge, skills, and capabilities to make sure that they will achieve their goals, ensure there will be no negative effect on Islamic finance. That's all from us. Thank you.